All right, let's jump right into this explainer and unpack the absolute crisis that is leaving tens of thousands of pickup trucks literally rusting on dealership lots right now. Because let me tell you, the pickup truck market is in a really weird, frankly chaotic spot as we head into mid-2026. Dealerships from coast to coast are just drowning in inventory. We're talking about massive, incredibly expensive vehicles just sitting there, gathering dust with absolutely nowhere to go and zero buyers in sight. It is a wildly fascinating situation, and today we're going to dig into some incredibly revealing data to break down exactly why this bottleneck is happening.
So instead of just reading you a dry list, we're going to tackle this by looking at the major economic themes. We'll cover the overarching truck panic, the heavy-duty rate squeeze, the so-called lifestyle truck misfits, the messy EV trap, and of course, what this whole market shift actually means for you.
Okay, part one, the great truck panic. Let's set the stage.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this backup, we need a baseline metric. That metric is market day supply, or MDS. This is exactly what we use to judge how stuck these trucks really are. Think of it like this. If an automaker completely stopped delivering new trucks to a dealership today, MDS is how many days it would take to totally clear out their existing lot, assuming sales keep crawling along at their current pace. And as we dive into these numbers, just keep in the back of your mind that a healthy, normal industry standard is just a tiny fraction of what these dealers are sitting on right now.
Moving right along to part two, heavy duty and the rate squeeze. We're looking at the heavy-duty haulers here, the legendary workhorses, your Ford F-250s, Ram 3500s, the rigs bought by contractors, farmers, and construction crews who actually need to tow mountains of gear. And they are piling up fast. The Ford F-250, it's sitting at 158 days of supply, which means there are over 40,600 units just parked across the nation. The Ram 2500 is doing even worse at 192 days, with 32,500 units sitting around. And then, wow, you have the Ram 3500 hitting an astonishing 200 days of supply. That's 12,000 trucks stuck on the tarmac. Commercial buyers are aggressively slamming on the brakes, and the backlog is just immense.
So why is this happening? Well, it's basically a toxic cocktail of commercial buyer fatigue, super tight credit, and honestly, some pretty severe mechanical issues. Take the 2026 F-250, for example. It's been hit with brutal recalls for a truck that's literally meant to haul heavy loads. We're talking rear drive shaft separation, faulty axle shafts, and trailer brake failures. Yikes. On top of that, commercial credit is incredibly tight right now. Data actually shows nearly half of trade-in shoppers are currently underwater on their previous loans. When you mix that negative equity with 8 to 9% financing rates, man, the math for a contractor gets really ugly, really fast. And then there's the price tag. Just look at this massive average transaction price for the Ram 3500, $77,000 for a work truck. What's wild, and what a lot of folks don't realize, is that because this specific truck is built down in Saltillo, Mexico, that massive price actually has factory tariffs baked right into it. The prices have just completely detached from reality, and working professionals are flat out refusing to absorb that cost. When you sit down and do the math on a $77,000 vehicle at today's rates, you really have to ask yourself, can any contractor logically afford these punishing monthly payments right now? Depending on your exact rate, a decent trim is going to run a business something like $1,300 to $1,400 a month. In this tight of an economy, no way. Businesses are simply deciding to hold off and run their old beat-up trucks just a little bit longer.
All right, that brings us to part three, the lifestyle truck misfits.
So if the big work trucks aren't selling because of commercial constraints, what about the fun consumer-focused models? You know, the ones bought for weekend camping trips or quick runs to the hardware store. Well, the Maverick, the Santa Cruz, and the Gladiator are proving that an affordable price tag just isn't enough to save you when niche hype completely fades. Remember when the Maverick was the hottest truck in America, selling way over sticker price? Yeah, well now it's sitting at 162 days of supply with over 43,000 units clogging up lots. And that's even with a pretty affordable average price of $34,000. The Hyundai Santa Cruz crossover hybrid, that's at 229 days. And the Jeep Gladiator is at a staggering 233 days of supply, with an average price pushing $49,000. This whole situation really highlights a massive shift in consumer behavior. The early waves of hybrid compact buyers, they've already bought in. They got their trucks. Ford ramped up production to meet that initial insane wave of demand. But then, the wave just passed. Now the market is saturated, and everyday buyers are being way more deliberate with their cash. For vehicles like the Santa Cruz and the Gladiator, they lack the real-world towing and payload of true mid-sized trucks like a Tacoma.
but they often cost more than a practical compact SUV. Bottom line, the cool factor alone just doesn't close deals anymore. And in some regional markets, the numbers are just unbelievable. We're seeing Jeep Gladiators sitting for up to 650 days. Think about that for a second. That is almost 2 entire years of inventory just gathering dust out in the sun. Because the Gladiator sacrifices practical utility for those off-road aesthetics, smaller bed, worse towing, worse fuel economy, Jeep is being forced to offer desperate 0% financing deals and massive cash rebates just to clear up space on the lot. They are practically paying buyers to take these things off their hands. Which leads us into part 4, the powertrain and EV trap. This is where the automakers really truly miscalculated. The incredibly messy transition to new engines and pure electric vehicles. Let's look at the Ram 1500, which is usually one of the absolute best-selling trucks in the whole country. Right now, there are over 70,000 units parked on lots. 70,000. And you might be asking, why? Well, Ram is actively phasing out the old beloved 5.7-liter Hemi V8 and bringing in their new Hurricane twin-turbo inline-6. So these two competing engines are literally cannibalizing each other on the exact same lots. And to make matters worse, early owners are reporting some pretty serious electrical gremlins on the new models. We're talking blank instrument clusters, no start conditions, massive battery drains happening at just 1,000 miles. At 60 grand, buyers are saying, nope, not taking that risk. Flipping over to the electric side, the story doesn't get much better. We've got the Chevy Silverado EV sitting at 199 days of supply and the GMC Sierra EV at 225 days. Both are just totally burdened by sky-high price tags. The Silverado averages nearly $75,000, and the Sierra EV takes the absolute crown for the highest price on our list at over $81,000. And that summarizes this whole EV trap perfectly. At those massive price points, hardcore contractors just don't trust the battery performance when they're hauling heavy loads, and they definitely don't trust the charging infrastructure out on muddy job sites. On the flip side, GMC is pitching the Sierra EV as this premium lifestyle truck. But guess what? Wealthy lifestyle buyers are choosing luxury SUVs instead. Plus, consumers aren't naive. They've watched EV truck values totally plummet off a cliff on the used market. That kills any confidence you might have had in dropping 81 grand on a brand new one. Now, as a quick aside, I know you might be wondering, hey, what about the Tesla Cybertruck? It definitely had a massive inventory problem last year, but it actually isn't on this list because Tesla artificially cleared out their backlog. They quietly slowed down production at Gigafactory Texas, shifted their workforce back over to the much higher demand Model Y, and Elon Musk actually sold unsold Cybertruck inventory to his own sister companies like SpaceX and XAI for their fleet use. So yeah, Tesla essentially moved the problem off the dealership lot by selling the trucks to itself. Pretty wild, right? And that brings us to the absolute #1 worst-selling pickup truck in America right now, the Ford F-150 Lightning. It is towering over the rest of the industry at 250 days of market day supply, with an average transaction price floating around $67,600. There are roughly 3,900 of these trucks just sitting on dealer lots with absolutely zero buyer interest. See, Ford has effectively discontinued this pure EV model. Back in late 2025, they announced they were pivoting to an extended range version that uses a gas generator to recharge the battery on the go, targeting something like 700 miles of range. Which is cool, but it means these 3,900 pure EV trucks sitting on lots today are essentially abandoned, first-generation tech that nobody wants to get stuck with. Think about it. Why on earth would you, as a consumer, buy a $67,000 truck that the manufacturer themselves just walked away from? Even with new, lower-priced trims, buyers are staying far, far away. Finally, part 5. What this means for you. Let's take a step back and look at the big picture of what this massive dealership surplus actually means for your wallet. We really need to understand that this isn't just some temporary glitch in the supply chain. This is a massive structural market correction. Automakers vastly overproduced to chase a post-pandemic demand wave that completely vanished. Exorbitant pricing completely outpaced economic reality and everyday wages. Those brutal interest rate squeezes we talked about crushed commercial fleets, and messy, overly expensive EV missteps basically paralyzed everyday consumers. The chickens have finally come home to roost for automakers who thought the boom would just last forever.
So I'll leave you to ponder this. Is this dealership desperation exactly the reset that truck buyers have been waiting for? Manufacturers are literally being forced to slash prices and bring back aggressive 0% financing just to stop the bleeding. If you've been waiting patiently on the sidelines for the balance of power to shift from the dealer back to the consumer, well, 2026 might just be your year. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and we will catch you next time.